Hi all, this is just a quick video on my Stratco shed which I built by myself and owner managed the construction of the slab and everything. It was a very frustrating experience with Stratco, so I'd just like to go through it and deal with some of the issues I encountered along the way. Many of them Stratco could address in future sheds, but this one was particularly annoying because it was a change in design to the from the original flat roof shed to be more in line with the columns etc. on the gable roof, and it's just been a real disaster getting the thing up. The first tip is don't trust any drawing that Stratco sends you that it might be representative of what you're actually going to get. This drawing here is essentially what's shown in the brochure. It's a flat top skillion roof, very low angle on the roof line, that type of thing, so it was basically what I wanted. This here is the drawing from the engineers as to what I was actually getting, and you can see the pitch on the roof is just ridiculous. It's not what I wanted, so when you look at the first drawing that you get, make sure that you understand things like roof angles and that, because the drawings aren't representative of what you're actually going to get. In the end, Stratco, I pushed back on Stratco and said I wanted a flat roof shed, and they changed it to a trim deck design. But it wasn't after some pushing to do that. The next criticism of Stratco is their documentation. It is just freaking woeful. Basically what's happened with this shed here is it's gone from one that was based around posts and it is now based around columns. These columns that you see in front of me at the moment, these are similar to what are on the gable roof design. The only difference is that they're oriented along the shed as opposed to into the shed, which makes getting to bolts a lot harder. It's also got this one beam across the top too, which will have some issues I'll describe later on. So what they've tried to do here is they've tried to take the old shed that they had, which had just feet that bolted down to the concrete slab with SHS columns on it, and they've tried to convert it to what the gable design is, just for commonality, which is fair enough. There's no issues with that. The trouble is it's brought in a whole heap of design issues as you try and put the blooming thing up. So the next issue I had was there's basically two installation guides. There's this one here which is for a flat top shed, and there's this one here which is for a gable roof shed. Now this one here has fleeting references to the skillion thing. So for instance, there's this drawing here, and that's about it. The rest of it's all just gable details, and it's a nonsense. It helps you at no end in actually putting up the actual shed. So you're stuck with this hybrid of how do I install this blooming thing. Now the big issue here was when you look at the installation guide here, it's got a slab mesh here which is SL72, and it's also got a trench mesh here, 8LTM 200, so basically 8mm bar at 200 intervals. Now when you look at the actual engineering calculations, I went to the effort of actually getting the soil classification, so it was a class M soil, and basically what I required down in the trench according to the calculations was an L11 type of trench mesh. Now the issue I had here was that I, being an engineer, went through and tried to work out what was correct out of all these documents, and the issue being that I went and directed the concreter to put the 11 mesh in as per the engineering calculations. Now basically what happened was the concreter came to site, he prepared all the trench, put in the vapor barrier and so on, put in all the trench mesh with the 11mm bars, and then anyway the inspector came along. Now the inspector came and he said to the guys that had been approved. Now I wasn't actually on the site at the time, so the guys went ahead and poured the concrete. Now a bit later on in the day I got an email saying, oh, the slab's non-compliant effectively because you've used 11mm bar instead of 8mm bar. Now I pointed out to the building inspector that the engineering calculations actually call out for an 11mm bar, and he agreed that that was the case, but it was just ridiculous that I had to go and argue the toss with the building inspector as to which document was correct. I was potentially put in the situation where I might have had to actually rip up the slab and put in another type of slab, which obviously would have been a pain in the bum, because the slabs, you know, well, I don't know if it's 200 mil or 300 mil thick. It's pretty thick anyway, and like to remove it would have been a nightmare. So I tried to rectify the instruction sort of basis with Stratco as to what I was meant to use, and they said, no, you've got to use the gable roof shed installation. Like I say, this thing is just, it's based around gable designs. The columns on this particular shed are completely different. So for instance here, where what I was saying before, in the corners they're oriented in this direction. In the gable shed they're like this, so that you can easily get to the bolts. So that's one thing that makes it quite hard to actually put up. There's also some other issues with the design where when you actually skin the sheet, which I'll go through in a second, you can't actually get to the bolts to put the roof purlins on. Now, one of my other criticisms is the delivery inventory that Stratco provides. It doesn't really reflect what you actually get. To a large degree it does, but a good example of this is the roof sheets. You can see here there's 5 roof sheets supplied. Now, my roof's, I think it's about 3.5 meters across. The sheets are about a bit over 600 mil wide, so I was wondering how I was going to get this to fit across the actual roof, because it looked like it was going to come in short. Now the dumb thing was, I put the 5 sheets up on the roof and then realised there was a 6th sheet, so there wasn't any issue at all. But you know, having a look at it on the ground, you just can't work out what's going on. The other thing is you get all these odd parts which are just extras. So you can see here, if you look across the top of the window there, there's like a wall purlin, there's another one down in the middle, and there's also one down below. Now on the design that they provided me, there was only meant to be two, and this is the actual design they provided me. You can see there's one wall purlin, 2 wall purlins, and so I said to them, well, what's this extra wall purlin? And they said, well, it's just an optional one, you can use it if you want. If you don't want to use it, well, so be it. So anyway, I've put it in up the top there, but it's just goddamn confusing when you get these extra bits. There was also other issues with the inventory sheet. So for instance, so up here where the roof screws are, they're got to be 65 mil screws. The ones I got were 50 mil screws. So again, I had all the roof sheets up on the roof ready to go. You know, it was reasonably windy. It was a pain in the bum getting them all up there, only to find that the screws weren't long enough to actually screw them down. You know, it's just unbelievable, basically. So the other thing to check too is that you've got all your deliveries. So unknown to myself, I'd actually only got in the original inventory, which was this sheet here, I'd been short supplied. So a couple of days later, these 4 columns turned up, and there's also meant to be a personal access door frame as well. So anyway, the columns turned up but no door frame. So the initial delivery was short. The second one that was meant to be the completion of it was also short. The PA door frame then took, you know, weeks and weeks to get done because they had to go and re-weld it and re-deliver it. And yeah, it's just a pain. You just can't get on with building the damn shed. The other thing I'd say about the inventory as well is there's just a lot of parts that they obviously just throw in as a kit just to pretty well cover whatever shed you're building type of thing. So you end up with all these odd screws that aren't required. There was a white beam that I had no idea where it went. There was no drawings to show where it went. I ended up chucking it out because, well, I just didn't need it, basically, was the bottom line to it. But when you're trying to get it all together and just trying to work out how to fit the things go together, it's extremely painful just when you get these confusing issues pop up. So one of the other issues on the inventory is these little brackets. They're only very minor. There's 10 of them. Now, even with, if you don't put up the extra wall purlin that they provided, you need 14 of them. So you're short of them straight away. Now, the other thing about these little brackets, they're basically just little bits of probably 100 mil odd angle iron, and they basically just connect the wall purlins to the columns. The issue with them is you've got to angle grind everyone to make them actually fit within the purlin, which is also painful. It's just not very well done.
Now, one of the other things is there's a number of features to this shed, which I don't know whether it's just because it's a new design. You can see behind that column there's a whole heap of spaces in there. This is because the roof purl and the main roof beam isn't as wide as the actual wall purl, and so the wall purlins sort of sit a bit more prouder than it. So you've actually got to go and make all these spaces to put them in there and make it up aligned properly. These weren't provided at all. So this is the other design feature that Stratco have. They've got a roof beam which runs the full length of the shed. Basically what you do when you've got one side of the shed up against the fence, and as per the instructions you skin it obviously so that you can tilt it up. Trouble is, once you skin it, you can't get to the inside of this C-channel section, which is the main roof beam. Now the problem being is that the roof purlins that you're looking at there have a bolt which comes down into the inside of that C-channel. The problem is because the outer skin's on, you can't actually get to that bolt. So what you've got to do is go and undo all of the skin screws and even some of the ones midway down, just so that you can bend the sheet enough to get your arm in and get that nut on, and then you've got to do that 12 times across each of the beams. It's just goddamn annoying, and it's prone to causing injuries to your arm just because of the sharp steel.
Now, one of the other issues that you have is you've got this C column also, which is in the corner here. If you come around the corner here, basically these sheets here have to bond onto that column, but there's a great big C channel space there, so I had to weld like steel brackets across here so that I could actually screw in behind this flashing into each of those, and I had to do that in 3 places where I was drilling. So that was just another dumb design where they haven't allowed for fixing the sheet to that particular column. So the other issue was this header beam that goes across the top of the door. It was just slightly too short for the building width, so when you add the columns together and the header and that, it just did not make sense in terms of alignment. So basically I bought the columns in line with where the roller door is meant to be. And the trouble is with that is in here, this column here got pushed a bit more to the right, which means that I had to re-drill all of the holes that were supporting that onto the rest of the workshop. Again, a lot of rework which was just very fiddly and time consuming. So a couple of things in this view. Firstly, the roller door guides, the ones that I got were just ridiculously long. They were just unwieldy, probably about 1.5 meters too long. Just seems stupid they were provided that long. The other thing is the downpipe here is pretty messy as well. You've got a pipe coming down basically. There should be an elbow right there just to tuck it into the building nicely. You can't get a strap on it until right down low there. It just looks a bit odd. So in summary, I'm pretty happy with the shed in terms of the quality of the product. The real downfall is just those design issues. As I said, it just makes it painful to get the bloody thing up. The documentation is just woeful. It is. If I was going to do this again, I'd not go to Stratco just because of the documentation. It was that bad. I had to go back to the sales guy, and fair enough, to credit to Stratco and particularly the sales rep that I was dealing with. He provided me with detailed drawings where I wasn't sure about things. So there was good support there, but I shouldn't have even had to have gone back there. Stratco needs to look very long and hard at their documentation. It is just woeful.